Hi, it's Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to the first anniversary show of Career Coach Office Hours. I've been doing this show, that's why it's called an anniversary, since April 30th of 2021. I started off doing it once a week because I wasn't sure that there was an audience for this. But over time, I've discovered there is, and it's now a twice weekly show where on Tuesdays and Fridays, I answer questions from people about job search, hiring more effectively, management, leadership, and whatever needs to be answered from a workplace perspective. I'll mention in advance that if you've got a question for me about one of those categories, you can put your question into chat and, click the wrong item. My apologies. You can put your questions about these things into chat and I'll cover them during the show today. And I also, of course, have a website at thebiggamehunter.us where you can schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching. I'd love to help you. You can also find out about my courses, books, and guides that focus on job search currently. And there's a lot there to help you in the blog. I've got more than 12,000 posts currently in the blog. And you can watch me on YouTube or Amazon TV at JobSearchTV.com. That's the app for Amazon. You can also subscribe to No BS Job Search Advice Radio, where Monday through Friday I have a podcast. Spotify, it's a video podcast. The other platforms, it's audio only. And you get advice about how to do an effective job search. So again, that's No BS Job Search Advice Radio, which is the #1 podcast and Apple podcast for job search, with more than 2,300 episodes over 11 plus years at this point. No show is even close to that one in the job search category. Now, I start off these shows with a coffee toast, and this one is to me for relentlessly sharing information with people to help you professionally, even though I don't directly profit from it. But I believe my role professionally is to help you get to know me so you can learn from me. And at times you may want to reach out to me for advice, for coaching, or for more. So thank you, Jeff. A quick tickle for myself. And I'll just simply say thank you for those of you who've watched me previously. I enjoy having the opportunity to serve you. Now, I received a number of questions in advance of this show, and I'll just start off with the first one, which is, can silence help you negotiate a pay raise? I'm going to put this in the chat so you can see that on the screen. Can silence help you negotiate a pay raise? I believe it can. And the way I do it, and the way I teach people to do it, is let's say you've gotten a job offer, and the offers come in a little bit low. And they've said, good news, we're making you an offer. It's for $5,000, $10,000 less than what you asked for, whatever the number is. And then what you do is sit quietly. You can be on the phone, you can be on Zoom, you can be in person. Doesn't really matter. But you sit silently for about a 5 count. And then you say, huh. And again, you sit in silence. Now, that communicates something to them, quite obviously. They know you're not happy, but you're not saying, what? You're not getting indignant. You're not pleading or begging. You're communicating with them through the silence that you're not pleased with their offer. So there's no arguing there. And then from there, what you can do is, I'd like to think about it for a few days and get back to you. And they know they're in trouble. Can I see all the offer material, the information about the benefits and vacation policy? Could you email that to me, please? And could you send over a copy of the offer letter? just in case I misheard something there. And you give them a little snigger and can I get back to you the day after tomorrow? And you're going to leave them uncomfortable. And if they say, well, what are you thinking? I'd like to think about it for a day or two before speaking. Let me circle back to you the day after tomorrow. If it's a Friday, you can say, can I circle back to you on Monday? Well, but what are you thinking? I'd like to circle back to you. Really keep it that simple so that in this way, you're not saying anything rash and you're letting the silence do the work. So can silence help you negotiate a pay raise? Can it help you negotiate a higher offer? Yes. Now I'm going to treat this now as a pay raise. Now, if they say, good news, we're giving you a 5% increase, you can sit there and go, 5%. Yeah, 5%. It's a 5% increase. 5%. Okay. And then you walk off and they know you're not happy. What's wrong though? Isn't 5% good? Now, we both know, as of the most recent report, inflation's at 8.5%, which means you've got to earn 11 in order to break even. So at 11%, 5% is a big cut. By the way, the reason it's 11% and not 8.5% is the government takes a cut on your increase again, right? So you lose approximately a third between federal, state, and local taxes, Social Security. This is what it costs you in the U.S. So yes, it's a painful thing, and you just sit there quietly and go, okay. And they know you're not happy. So it doesn't mean they necessarily respond. It's possible that they'll come back to you in a day or two and try and get you more because they know you're not happy. Remember, sometimes what silence does is flips the pressure onto the other person so that in this way they feel it necessary to respond to your silence. Will this work every time? No, nothing works all the time. But having coached people in lots of different roles, it is effective. You don't put your foot in your mouth. You don't go into attack mode because as soon as you attack, you lose. And if necessary, you start looking for something else that gets you above inflation. So I've got another question. Why do employers prefer recruiting new software developers instead of giving raises to current staff as they're improving? Often they do give raises to current staff as they're improving. Unfortunately, the work becomes repetitive. Why do they hire from the outside? Well, they sometimes need additional people, not different people. So number one is they're hiring additions to staff because there's more work than the existing staff can handle. The second reason they do it is, frankly, they're expecting a certain amount of turnover. So they're anticipating that and moving through it by getting people into the queue. Also, you start getting too expensive for their budgets. So they need to get less experienced people, less expensive people than their existing staff. And fourth, if salaries are pretty common across the board because information's out there pretty readily, well, they can't attract people by giving them the same money that you're getting because it's about the same money that they're currently getting. So they've got to give them a raise in order to attract them. Those are the primary reasons why they pay more for people from the outside. They interview less experienced people from the outside and all the other stuff. Next question. How do you close an interview that takes a longer time? So let's say you've been scheduled for 30 minutes and it's now 40. Now, you have a choice to make there. And the choice is Is it going well and do you have time? Are you feeling distracted by the amount of time that it's taking? Do you have an appointment to go to? Well, the simplest way to do this is to say, when I was asked to schedule this time, I was told the interview would be about 30 minutes. And we're at 40 right now, and I've got a meeting in 5 minutes. So I've got to bring this to a conclusion. If you'd like, we can use the next minute or two to schedule a follow-up conversation so we can continue the interview. Can that work for you? And then you start reaching for your phone to take it out so that this way you're indicating that you're ready to schedule the appointment. And they may turn around and go, "Oh, I was just enjoying this so much. I was just chatting. This wasn't really the interview," or something along those lines. So from your standpoint, the easiest way to do it is to call attention to the fact that the interview is running long, and thus you have someplace else to be, someone else to talk to, something along those lines. So I'm just going to remind you here that if you've got questions about job search, hiring, management, leadership, or want advice about a particular workplace issue, put that into chat so that this way I can answer your questions during today's first anniversary show. Okay? Let's see what the next question is. How can I tell if a job posting is just a way of collecting resumes? Well, I don't think there's a way to really check that. After all, it's not like you can go into their system. It's not like there's a signal that they have that indicates that that's the case. You can tell more at the interview by whether they dig in deeply and treat it as a real interview. But I always point out to people, what's in it for an employer to do that? Because they're collecting resumes? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Frankly, it's a waste of their time too. And it's a waste of a lot of people's time if they do that. If they're just collecting resumes, no point in that. It's not like companies need to have conversations or post ads to collect resumes. They're getting spammed with resumes so heavily. If anything, they want fewer resumes. So, you can, at the time of the interview, you sell yourself aggressively. You talk about what you can do that solves their problem, meet their needs, all that sort of stuff. And then from there, let go. Frankly, there's no way you can ever tell. And it's unlikely that they're really doing it because it really wastes their time. Let's go to the next question. Okay. If your current company gives you a counteroffer matching your new job offer, should you stay? Is it wise to stay? Okay. This reminds me, and I apologize if this is offensive to anyone. It reminds me of the abused spouse whose wife, husband, or partner promises to do better. This is the last time. I'm so sorry. Please don't go. I'll do better. Really. And in this case, all they're doing is matching the other offer. They're not improving upon it. It's equal to it. And you had to put a gun to their head to get it. So in hostage situations, you can wind up promising anything, and then the hostage situation ends and they go back to the way they were previously. So there's nothing in it for you to stay. Money may have been only one of a series of reasons why people left or why you wanted to leave. Have you addressed the other factors too? Probably not. And as a result, you wind up in this situation where all they're doing is matching the money. You're not moving ahead. This other firm acted with good intention, and you're letting them down. They did nothing wrong. Your current employer did. Why are you rewarding them with loyalty when they haven't shown any to you? Now, if you said a 10% increase, a 15% increase over what the other offer was, I'd have to think about that for a little bit and see what other factors were involved. But the long and the short of it is, start planning on moving on to something else. Your current firm doesn't need to be rewarded for their bad behavior. So I'm going to remind you that you ought to visit my blog at thebiggamehunter.us, where I've got more than 12,000 searchable posts about job search, hiring more effectively, management, leadership, and much more. And you can schedule time there for a free discovery call, a coaching session, find out about my courses, books, and guides. There's a lot there to help you. Okay? So with that, the next question is, let's see now. How can I learn how to hire people? Well, there are lots of different ways. Let me give you the basics of how to hire effectively. Number one is on a skills basis. Identify the skills needed to do the job that you need to have done. That should be pretty obvious. Number two is determine questions that are going to allow you to evaluate whether people have the knowledge needed to do the job you need them to do. That should seem pretty obvious. And I'm just going to acknowledge here, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Matthias. Welcome. If you've got a question for me, put it in the chat. I'd be happy to answer it. So we're here about learning to hire people. And if once you've determined the requirements, if you have other people involved with the hiring, make sure that they understand what's needed and how to evaluate the way you want them to be evaluated. Next, from there, recognize you cannot evaluate for fit unless you're applying a standardized test, an industrial psychology test of some sort that allows you to assess for personality and match it with the people within the current organization. And you need to administer that test every time you hire, because the way people are on staff now and you are different than the way they'll be at the time of the next hire. People learn and grow, right? So they change, they adapt, their needs change and adapt. So you kind of have to put the staff through this and you through this every time you hire in order to figure out whether someone fits, might complement the staff in a particular way. And by that, I mean they have a different way of looking at things that reflects a blind spot within the staff. And if this is starting to sound complicated, it is. Take a course, take multiple courses, start watching videos on YouTube. I've got a book, You Can Fix Stupid, No BS Hiring Advice related to hiring that'll pique some of your ideas. And there's much more. Look for other books, look for other courses, ask your HR department for a course that they can recommend for you and that they pay for it. And it's important that you do this and you learn this skill, because if you act like an amateur and learn through trial and error on hiring, you're going to have problems at some point. Really, you're going to have problems. And the impact of that is going to affect your performance, the performance of other people on the team, and your ability to deliver for your organization. You're wise to be asking this question, and I'll just simply say, take the time and learn. Got a question from John Sampson. Should you continue interviewing after you've accepted an offer? I know what HR organizations want me to say, and I suspect you know that too. They'll want you to say, oh, no, you've made a commitment. But what about if the organization has misrepresented a position to you? Your protection against this is to continue interviewing. And I normally say for 30 days, sometimes I'll say 45, no more than 60 after you join the new firm, in order to ensure that you're not trapped in a bad situation, have shut down your options, and left yourself in the lurch if a hiring manager misrepresents an opportunity. Why would they do that? Well, they're trying to fill a position. And what I know from statistics is 30% of new hires leave within 6 months. Catch that number. 30% of hires leave within 6 months, with the result being, if you're in that situation, you feel like the job is misrepresented to you. The company isn't having you do what you expected to do. It's not the job you expected. So, John, I would just say your protection is to continue to have conversations after you join a firm. Okay. Now, I've got a question from Matthias. When are the best moments to talk about salary of the position? Now, I want to start off with my assumption about salary negotiation. Salary negotiation starts from the moment they ask you a question about compensation. So, in some parts of the country, they can ask, what are you making? And in most parts of the country, in all parts of the country, they're allowed to ask, so what are you looking for? Now, that's the question where you're really starting the negotiation. They're starting with any question about salary. Your job is to defer and deflect. And the way you do that is by saying, well, it's hard for me to talk about what I'm looking for. All I've seen is the job ad. All I've seen is a job description that may or may not be accurate. I haven't met my future boss, don't really have a sense of what the demands or expectations are of the position. Haven't met my team yet. Can we come back to that a little bit later? But I need a number. I can give you a number now. And by the way, what's the salary for this position? Well, I asked you first. Yes, and I'll get to that. But what's the salary range for the position? At which point, if they start trying to bully you, you've got a message from them. You may not like that message, but they're giving you information that I think is useful. They'll eventually cave. Just stick with what's so difficult about telling me the salary range for the position? And they'll tell you, at which point you'll go, and I stand by what I said. I know next to nothing about this job except what Rona or Ronnie, the recruiter, said, except what I read in the job description. I haven't met anyone really. So let's circle back to that later. And thus, you're deflecting, and now you know the salary range. So at the time they're asking you about your compensation or what you're looking for, Matthias, that's the time really to bring it up. And on your side, you don't want to get pinned down to a number because they take that as being the number. So, for example, if you say 150 to 175, just for the sake of argument, they hear 150 as being viable. They don't hear the 175 because that's what HR departments and screeners do. They always listen for the lowest number, right? So, from my vantage point, don't get pinned to a number. Defer, deflect, circle back when they ask again after you know more. So that this way, you don't get into harder arguments later once they've heard the first number. Now they're going, but you said 150. How did this change? Well, I learned more about the job. And I learned that this is a harder job than what the ad said. Yeah, but you said 150. You get where I'm going with this, right? So as soon as they raise money, defer and deflect. Then from there, if they start pinning you down, you start asking again, so what's the range for this position? Great. I'll circle back to you once I know a bit more. Certainly before you make the offer, let's have this conversation. And that's the way you handle it. Okay. I hope that was helpful to you, Matthias. I hope that was helpful to you, John. And let's go on to the next question. And folks, if you've got one for me, I want to encourage you, put your questions about job search, hiring, management, leadership, or any question about advice you need related to the workplace into the chat. I'd be very happy to answer your questions. Okay? Let's continue on. Do you look for a higher salary or better title when you change positions? Let's see now. I believe the answer is yes. You look for a higher salary and a better title when you change jobs. And if it's a question of one or the other, these days you have to bring money into the equation. You cannot ignore the financial side of this because inflation is stripping the value of your income. And like I said, at 8.5%, right now that translates into you have to earn 11% just to break even. Just to break even with what your previous spending power was. So don't just sit there and be taken advantage of. If they ask you why you're asking for a 20% raise, because inflation's at 11, and just to break even, I need to earn 11, and I'm not going to change jobs for 11. I need to make more than that. And as a result, I just want to call into account, if you're looking for me to lead an organization and you give me a title that doesn't reflect that, I can't join for that because I don't have the institutional authority to be able to actually lead without the title. After all, what SVP is going to listen to a senior manager who they disagree with? They pull rank, right? Now, if we're talking about two staff positions, well, that's different. If you're going from one staff position to another, at least get a senior title. Go for a senior title to differentiate yourself from the newbies, from the new employees. Go for a senior title and more money. Last time I noticed you're not independently wealthy. You need to get an increase. And the result is, unless you get that increase and the improvement in title, you're out of luck. Oh, got another one from John. When they've made a salary offer after the silence, could you ask if there's a sign-on bonus? Absolutely. And that to me is, I would come back to them after the day or two and make that one of my opening questions. I don't believe you deal with the salary question first. I want you to have a list of questions that you can ask them, one of which would be about sign-on bonus. But as you know, John, a sign-on bonus just deals with the circumstances in the current job change. It doesn't deal with them over the course of time. So let's say they came in $5,000 late and they say, we're going to give you a $10,000 sign-on bonus. Great. And your next raise is predicated upon your base salary, which, well, if it's a 5% raise, if it's a 10% raise, you're behind on inflation. So my concern about that is inflation is increasing these days. And with inflation comes reduced purchasing power. So I want to make sure that you're not left in the position where you have to change jobs again. And you can say to them, look, right now inflation's at 11%. 8.5% is the headline rate. But for me to just break even, I have to take care of taxes too, which brings it up to 11. I don't want to feel compelled to change jobs again so readily when you give me a 5 or 6% raise next time and inflation is still high. So I just as soon go for the salary now. And is there a way that you could see your way clear to a sign-on bonus as well? I'd approach it that way because, again, salary is a piece of this. Sign-on is a temporary salve, like a Band-Aid on top of a wound that doesn't leave the real issue addressed. So that's my concern about doing that. But I wouldn't have that conversation during the call where they extend the offer. I want the silence to do the work for me. And make them nervous that they might lose you. After all, HR will normally extend the offer. The hiring manager is going to go, so what do you think? When's she going to be starting? When's he going to be starting? And they have to now say, I don't know. Well, get him. I don't want to start this over again. So internally, there's pressure to move this forward and to be more accommodating. That's why the silence is so effective. It makes other people put pressure on the institution to adapt and respond to you without saying, what? This offer is awful. I can't do this. You got to make it better. You don't have to do that here. So give it a day or two, circle back, make the question about sign-on a part of it, but don't just settle for the sign-on because that's only a temporary solution. And I don't see any evidence of inflation stopping anytime soon. I'm sure you're the same way. I'm going to go on to another question. I loved this one. Let me come back. Thank you. Do companies hire people having a 90-day notice period? Not in the U.S. Not in the U.S. In Europe, that's much more common. But in the United States, no. So if you give your employer 90 days notice, you're asking the new firm to wait for 3 months before you can join. How many firms do you think are going to do that? They've got a need now. They're going to keep interviewing because they can't trust that you're actually going to join, right? Now, if this is about a visa and they know about the visa needing to be transferred, that's different. But if we're just talking about a straight resignation, not going to happen. It just won't happen in the United States. So with that, I've got one here. How helpful are online job networks and apps for finding a job? They work. Everything works. Everything works in job search. It really does. However, the problem is it never works as frequently as we like. And statistics are that most people find their job as a result of networking, not through a job board, not through LinkedIn or anything like that. So online job networks and apps for finding a job are all part of the equation. Now, you can be in a group and develop a presence and a reputation within a group as a subject matter expert. By all means, to do that. As someone I interviewed for my YouTube channel told his story, he joined the forum and was noticed by the owner of a business in the US, and he was in one of the Baltic states, who hired him onto staff, and he's working remotely for them now, all because this person noticed them online. So yes, it can work, but it never works as often as we like. Now, LinkedIn, terrific, absolutely terrific. Is it the only way? No, of course not. LinkedIn is a network that facilitates relationship. It is not per se the firm that's hiring you. So in facilitating relationships, you have to do something to create relationships. You can do that on LinkedIn. It's kind of like the U.S. Postal Service or a fax machine or an email. You're doing things to facilitate a relationship. The Postal Service does not get you a job, right? Email does not go out and get you a job. So it's different and it helps. So unless I see another question put into chat, I'm going to wind down today the first anniversary show and simply say, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back Tuesday, which I think is May 3rd. If it isn't, I apologize, but I think it's Tuesday, May 3rd at 1 p.m. Again, this show is done Mondays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern, where I take questions about job search and hiring, management, leadership, and much, much more. And, I'll just remind you, visit my website to schedule time for a free discovery call, a coaching session, to visit my blog, which has more than 12,000 searchable posts. Find out about my courses, books, and guides. The courses currently are really about job search. Job interviewing. I have more coming. I'm just finishing one on informational interviews. It should be out in the next 2 weeks. So that's the next course to come out. And I'll also mention JobSearchTV.com on YouTube. Download the app of the same name on Amazon. Subscribe to No BS Job Search Advice Radio and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where it's a video podcast, Amazon Music, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Matthias, you're welcome. That's what I'm here for. Glad I could help. Okay. And John, thank you as well. I know you understand my ideas. We've known one another for 100 years or thereabouts. So I know you get what I'm saying. Connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. Mention that you saw this. I like knowing I'm helping some folks. And once we're connected, the network is going to grow a lot. I hope you have a terrific day. And most importantly, be great. Take care.